It requires so much capital to open a restaurant. So my savings and investment strategy differs probably from most of your listeners. Traditional saver puts money away, they lock it up for retirement, they revisit it as they approach their golden years. And for me, every time I open a restaurant, I need to access that capital.
As a new business owner, if you're looking to lease space, you have to really look at your long-term plan and your long-term vision.
If I was to give one piece of advice, it's really to, in the early planning stage, to have your ducks in a row for sure.
I had a client who was a business owner, had about 13 employees, was the sole person in charge of payroll. After he passed, the family didn't know what to do. There was no operating agreement. How were the employees going to get paid next Friday? The accounts were locked.
I know how it is to be a smaller restaurant. I was there and not having the resources to stay afloat. And you're going to see some casualties, unfortunately. So that's always hard as an operator to see, because you know what people put into it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Chimes Dimes podcast, coming to you here from historic downtown Winter Garden. We're actually in the Hangry Bison, so special thanks to them for allowing us to film in this awesome location. As you can see, the food looks amazing. We have some nice flights laid out in front of us. We're going to discover what they're about, and this has just been a fantastic place to film. But I'm Pete Baksh, Chief Investment Officer at First Wealth and Trust, who's putting this on. We want to thank everybody, but especially you, Joe, for letting us do this here. That was really great. I have a thing where I would say some things about the place, but why don't you say it? Yeah. About the Hangry Bison.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you choosing my restaurant to host your event here, the podcast. But yeah, so Hangry Bison is a restaurant concept I started in 2018, and just a burger, bourbon, craft beer, craft cocktail concept that started as a build-your-own concept to build your meal, and gravitated towards craft beers, craft cocktails, and fortunate enough now we have 3 locations and a 4th on the way. So God's been good, and we're happy to be here as part of the community in Winter Garden. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here, and thanks for letting us use this space. You have an awesome place.
Well, thank you.
And we've met Joe. How about a little about you, Jeanette, your background and what it is that you do?
Now, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Jeanette Mora. I am the owner of an elder law and estate planning law firm. We help people at the most vulnerable stage of their lives. You know, if they've lost a loved one during their planning, if a loved one has become incapacitated, and we just kind of, help individuals navigate through those times.
Well, thank you for being on.
And thank you for having us, yes.
Before we get into the meatier business topics that we're going to be getting to later, let's talk about these flights that are in front of us, and maybe your recommendation as to how to start, why it's on there. What's the story of the flight?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, a flight's a great way to sample a variety of whiskeys, beer. We even do a Tuesday night flights at the restaurant. We do a burger flight, so you can sample a variety of burgers we offer. But this in particular is our Buffalo Trace flight. It's a great representation of Buffalo Trace Distillery. They're known as probably the top distillery, most popular distillery in the world. They make Pappy Van Winkle, they make Buffalo Trace, the Blanton's, etc. So these are some of their expressions. In this case, we have the Sazerac Rye, their Buffalo Trace, which is their flagship label, and then we also have Blanton's, which is higher end, highly sought after bourbon. So in this case, I would start with the Buffalo Trace. It's the center one here. And that just gives you the great introduction to bourbon. You know, if you've never had it, it's really smooth. It's an approachable proof point, so it's not going to burn you. And it's just a great way, in my opinion, to enjoy this flight and kind of start getting some experience in what Buffalo Trace Distillery has to offer.
Well, that sounds fantastic. What do you say we give this thing a try?
Absolutely.
We'll
Go
do
for
our
it, guys.
little toast here. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm enjoying my mocktail.
Yeah, that is very smooth. You're right.
Smooth, approachable, easy drinking. It's a good way to start your flight. You know, warms up the palate, wakes up the mouth, and then as we get into the podcast, we'll dive into some of the others.
Sounds fantastic. Well, you already kind of telegraphed it, what's next for Hangry Bison. That was a question that I had on my list, but you said there's a 4th location in the works?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll start construction this summer, so really excited about that. We'll hopefully be open early next year.
Fantastic.
We're heading out to Southwest Florida.
And what did you take into account when you thought about the new location and where you wanted to go?
Well, we wanted to get outside of Central Florida. I mean, my master plan is to eventually grow within the state. So we were seeking out opportunities within 4 hours of Orlando. And we came across the community, Bonita Springs, just outside of Naples. And, the right opportunity presented itself with the landlord. There's a lot about the community that I felt it was underserved. It needed this. We're going to be part of a town center, so there's a new town center there. Important things in the restaurant as you grow is just making sure you get the deal right at the beginning. And there was a lot about this that caught our attention. So initially, it would be nice to be closer to home. This is my home base. However, I've opened restaurants hours away from where I live. I've had restaurants in Lakeland and the Villages, and so heading out there wasn't overly intimidating. I just felt the right opportunity presented itself, and we're excited about it.
Well, that's fantastic news. Yeah. Let's talk about this topic that he's just hit on, leasing space, and you know, from the legal perspective, what kind of considerations come up?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's a plethora of considerations when you're dealing with business owners and estate planning and the legal side. Obviously, there's that the transactional legal side that, of course, you're dealing with the lease contracts and having the right individuals, you know, draft those contracts, get the lease terms in place. And sometimes those leases take a while to get down because you're really getting into the nitty-gritty of the terms of those contracts. But then there's a planning side to that as a business owner, you know, sometimes some of the basics of consideration is business succession. You know, what happens if the business owner has a catastrophic event? What happens if the business owner is incapacitated for some reason? Ultimately, what happens if you pass? How does either the business continue on with the legacy that you've built, and also how do you provide for the legacy of your family? To name a few.
So, Joe, a lot of buzz in the area, a lot of real estate transactions.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can say to that, or?
Yeah, well, I have a new landlord. So we're one of the buildings that were acquired down here in downtown Winter Garden. You know, it's scary. Not scary in the sense of the unknown is scary. That's what I meant. Not necessarily our situation scary. Anytime there's something unknown, unpredicted like that, you know, there's reason for concern. In our case specifically, we have an existing lease. The transaction was smooth. We have a new landlord, technically, but everything remains intact. It starts with, as we talked about earlier, with having that lease and just having yourself protected. You know, my understanding is there's some other small businesses in downtown Winter Garden that their lease has expired or was up for renewal, and they didn't have an opportunity to secure their space prior to their building being acquired. I mean, that's unfortunate, you know, and it's hard to predict and plan for that. So my heart goes out to those small businesses that find themselves in a difficult position now. But fortunately for us and many of the others, if you spoke to other tenants that have existing leases that carry over, we're still in a good position with this landlord. That's not to say that something can't happen. I mean, but I don't expect it. You know, everything my experience has been positive so far.
That's great.
Yeah, we're looking forward to remaining here, the duration of my lease, and through the renewal options.
Piggyback off that is, and you mentioned it, the bullseye was the negotiation of the lease. And some of these leases might have been a little bit older. Some of these leases might have not had continuity. Some of these leases, you know, sometimes a new business owner may be afraid to have a longer term lease and opt to do something shorter, 1 to maybe 3 years, not knowing that things could be a little bit tougher when that lease term is up. And I think this is what we're seeing in some of these businesses here now, where the leases are up and the opportunity for renewal is just out of their range. And unfortunately, we're seeing, you know, some of these, you know, beautiful businesses that aren't going to be able to remain because of that change. But I think that as a new business owner, if you're looking to lease space, you have to really look at your long-term plan and your long-term vision as a business. What is it that you know, what is your intent? And that's a little harder to do. You have a big vision of your business, but what's the longevity plan? right? You have the vision of the operations plan. This is what we're going to do as a new business, but what's your longevity plan? Do you plan on do you want to make space? Do you want to create a spot that then you build your brand surrounding, where you're located? But it's part of that lease negotiation, and I think that's what we're seeing a lot of here that's happening, in the downtown area, unfortunately. But
yeah. So, Joe, you mentioned, building a new location, and it brings up the question, how does that work? The decision process, the investing, where things are coming from to make that happen.
It requires so much capital to open a restaurant. So my savings and investment strategy differs probably from most of your listeners. A traditional saver puts money away, they lock it up for retirement, they revisit it as they approach their golden years and to build for the future. For me, every time I open a restaurant, I need to access that capital. So I'm not in a position to take whatever savings I accumulated and lock it up where I can't touch it till I'm 65, for example. I need to be able to access that capital, put it down, in partnership with a bank, and lending. So for example, my first restaurant, I opened. I ended up borrowing money. I didn't have a whole lot of money on my own. I had a little bit to secure the lease, but I ended up borrowing from all kinds of people, friends, families, etc. But one thing I did that was very smart, and thanks to some good advice I was given, was I bought a house. So instead of buying an apartment, renting an apartment, I purchased a home, which it put me in a position to establish credit, of course, but also to have an asset. So as I looked to open my next restaurant, I had a home equity line of credit I could use to build. So for me, it's been a series over the 24 years of stepping stones, using resources that I had. But it really started with buying that house, home equity line of credit, opening, paying it down, opening another restaurant, so tapping into it again.
Gotcha. So, Joe, what does retirement look like for a guy like you?
Yeah, so I guess in my case, it would be hopefully by the time I'm in a position that I'd like to sell the businesses. That is my retirement plan. It's not necessarily, so it's quite risky. So, today we're open. Tomorrow, the next crisis hits, and we have to close all the restaurants, and my assets are all tied up into the business. So, but we've been successful so far, and hopefully, I ride this out as long as I'm able to, and then one day when the time is right, we seek to get acquired in some capacity,
Gotcha.
and at that point, that's someone like me, my retirement plan. Again, it's a riskier avenue, but it doesn't scare me as much as it would some people that are used to something a little more secure, and then probably the restaurant business isn't for them. But the idea of one day having money in the bank that's safe is appealing to me. So, not that it's going to happen anytime soon. There's no breaking news on this podcast, but one day that's my goal, to have an opportunity to liquidate the business and then give you a call and say, hey, can you help me do something with this money?
Well, that sounds great. We'll have that call one day.
Excellent.
so the end goal, you've got that end goal, and then it says, well, what documents do you have to have in place in order to achieve that end goal? During the business and during the time that you're taking out the loans, or the time that you're building your capital to run your business, you've got some essential documents from an estate planning perspective that you want to make sure you have in place. Do you have a good durable power of attorney? Do you have a good healthcare power of attorney? And do you have a living will if something happens to you? And so you've got these estate planning documents, a suite of documents that can help so much in ensuring that things at least can run smoothly by giving other people the proper authorization to act on your behalf when you are unable to do it, or if you're absent, or if you want to take time off with your family. Then on the other side is, what happens if you pass away? Then how does all of that work that you've done, what documents do you have in place that can provide the succession planning, the legacy planning, the planning for your family, your children, their grandchildren, however your intent is to leave your legacy? What are those documents to make sure you have all your ducks in order, that in your planning side that can supplement, that ability to be able to, continue to operate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
For you, Joe, have you learned any particular lessons that you wish you would have known before you started down this path, and you learned along the way, but maybe either the hard way or maybe you wish you knew ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, man, where do I begin? How much time do we have?
Well, we got some time.
Do we?
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I grew up in the restaurant business. So I had the opportunity to learn from my parents and see what they did right, see what they did wrong, and try not to duplicate the same mistakes that they made, and apply that knowledge. And that doesn't mean that I didn't make my own mistakes along the way, but certainly it gave me that slight advantage to see what worked and what they were successful at, and I knew what I was getting myself into to begin with. But mistakes, just like you touched on about the legal aspect and the lease, there is so much there.
Yeah.
That just because you're a restaurant operator, just because you know the business, just because you're good at food, man, the mistakes are often made at that early stage in lease negotiation, non-competes, radius restrictions, what ifs, all the what ifs, because sometimes they may happen. Trying to operate a restaurant once you're in business, and one of those what if surfaces, and navigating through that is difficult, is stressful. It's stressful enough when things are going well in the restaurant business, much less having not planned that ahead of time. So if I was to give one piece of advice, it's really to, in that early planning stage, to have your ducks in a row for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned it at the beginning, starting well, right?
Yep.
For someone that's opening up their own business, Jeanette, maybe starting out at that beginning, what are you advising them, or how are you advising them? I know that's a open-ended question, but...
Yeah, it can be pretty open-ended, but I can talk to really the number one mistake that I see for someone starting their own business at any structure is they don't have an operating agreement. You start up a business, you get an LLC, you get a tax ID number. In Florida, you go on sunbiz.org, and okay, I'm a business owner now. And that's all you got. The first question that I ask is, do you have an operating agreement? And sometimes they don't even know what that is. And so one of the things, with an operating agreement, you are able to really, truly lay out the structure of how your business is going to operate. Who's in charge of what? Who are you placing in charge of the financials? I had a client who was a business owner, had about 13 employees, was the sole person in charge of payroll. After he passed, the family didn't know what to do. There was no operating agreement. How were the employees going to get paid next Friday? The accounts were locked. An operating agreement can have those types of things in place, those types of instructions in place as to what happens for the succession planning of either death or incapacity. Had the same thing happen with a client who became incapacitated, and everything just froze. This time he's alive, but he was incapacitated, and then the family had to really spend quite a bit trying to get a guardianship or a conservatorship in some other states it's called. And so really, I think the number one, when you talk about mistakes, Joe, earlier, the number one mistake is that I see business owners start a business without an operating agreement. It's like your business Bible. You really should have an operating agreement. You want to talk to an attorney, a business attorney that can draft a well-drafted operating agreement based on your intent, based on your goals, based on the goals of the business and who the players are, and to be able to at least have a well-written document that provides that continuity of your business.
Sure.
Right?
I'm going to come back to you, Joe. What are the biggest challenges right now in this business?
Yeah, I was having a conversation. We had a team meeting, managers meeting this morning with my management team from all the restaurants, and it's just a perfect storm of challenges. I started my first restaurant when I was 24. I'm 48 now, so 24 years I've been an owner and navigated. A lot has happened. The housing crisis and a lot of stuff. There's always something in the restaurant business. The product's expensive, labor, those are normal. But where we are today is more challenging than ever. I think we're in a strong position. We're navigating it well, and I know how it is to be a smaller restaurant. I was there, and not having the resources to stay afloat. And you're going to see some casualties, unfortunately. So that's always hard as an operator to see, because you know what people put into it. But yeah, so right now it's a tough time, but I think the future's bright. Though there are some signs showing that things are softening. Consumers are going to start coming out again, and the costs have leveled off a little bit. So I think the worst is mostly behind us. Just kind of navigate and welcome all the customers back when they're ready.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well said. Maybe we should drink to that. Where are we at on this flight for the next number two?
The second taste, I would recommend the Sazerac Rye.
All right.
The rye this is a low rye. This is only 51% rye. So it's just a mild, approachable rye. Some of these high ryes are really spicy and bold. This is certainly approachable, a lot more mild. Again, in the Buffalo Trace portfolio, it's one of their flagship brands, and something worth enjoying.
Salute. Cheers.
Salute. Cheers. There you go.
One, and I'll get
I feel very left out here
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
with my mocktail.
Oh, that's nice.
A little spicier, right? The proof is also approachable, but you get that spice from the rye. Just it makes a wonderful cocktail.
Oh, absolutely. So, Joe, do you ever worry about what is going to happen with the business? Say you're not able to run it anymore.
Do I worry about it? Yes, of course. Even if I had a perfect plan in place, you're concerned because things happen. But I feel good about where I am just because I have the experience, and I've been in situations where actually a few years ago I broke my left leg, and I was the running, managing operator of a high-end restaurant in the Villages, my Italian concept back then, and I wasn't able to run the restaurant, work the floor, meet with guests, and I had to pivot quickly, and I didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
But fortunately today, I learned from that, and I have a hierarchy of staff, and I have a team of people that report to me that run the restaurant, and it took years to get here. It's not as easy as opening your first restaurant and you're running and you're doing everything. You're the cook, the host, the marketing person, the accountant, the janitor. So it's easier said than done, and that's just a challenge of being a small business. But once you get to a certain place where you can hire people and put systems in place, it's important to stop and just think about these things. So understandably, at the beginning of starting your business, it's a smaller plan.
Sure.
But as you grow, if you're fortunate enough to grow and have success, you got to go back and revisit that.
What type of lawsuits, disputes, things of that nature do you typically see in terms of businesses like this, like we're talking about?
Generally, you would probably see more disputes about management, compensation, partners, investors, silent partners, not silent partners. You may see disputes on, promises made or promises perceived, and someone wants to exit, maybe uses proprietary information to try to start off on their own and branch out on their own. We see that a lot. I mean, you can see that a lot in businesses, especially when you're dealing with certain partnerships or individuals who start at the very beginning of a venture, and ultimately someone decides that they want to break off on their own and utilize some of the proprietary information that they acquired during the time that they were building and dreaming and envisioning of the first business. I mean, we see that a lot in businesses in general. Trademark disputes, tons of business litigation. I mean, when you're picking your partners, when you're picking your people, the one legal document that is another important one is the non-compete, or rather the NDAs, the non-disclosure agreements. As soon as you bring someone on board, especially if you're a new business owner and you're starting your venture, that becomes your proprietary assets. Those are your proprietary inventory. So what does your non-disclosure agreement say? And make sure that is a tight non-disclosure agreement. Same thing with non-competes, not being able to go out and compete against you. And in order for you to protect your intellectual property, you got to have those documents in place. Otherwise, you will see bad actors, kind of go out and hence then the litigation side starts. Sometimes disputes over lending, disputes over financials, disputes over intellectual property, disputes over proprietary information. I mean, it can be a whole gamut of that. And that's just on the business operations side. We're not even talking about what happens, family disputes after somebody dies, and if there's a second marriage, and if there's kids of the first marriage or kids from somewhere else. And so you can have estate planning disputes as well when a business owner passes away, and this is an asset now of the estate, but how does that asset get distributed? Did you have an operating agreement that had a succession plan to say who was going to continue to run the business? Did you have vehicles that could avoid costly litigation or costly probate things such as a trust? Did you have asset protection in your businesses to avoid, some type of liability within? So there's just a lot of considerations that you can see litigation really open up. I've known of some litigation cases that are still going on years and years beyond the person passing away. The lawyers make it a very happy, ending. The lawyers are the ones that are pretty much the ones that are winning in the end.
So my last question, I suppose, for you, Joe, before we get into another tasting here, our final one. It's tough to balance entrepreneurship, leadership, family life, and investing for the future. I mean, how do you approach that?
I mean, I'm going to want to get to this third drink, so this could take a long time, though. It's a tough balance, and it took me years. I mean, I've been in the business as an owner of 24 years, half my life. And it wasn't always, fortunately now I have a good grasp of things, and I've been blessed, and business is good. But at the beginning, it wasn't always like that. So something had to suffer. So I had to pour myself into my business, which meant time with my wife, and then soon after marriage, my children did suffer at the beginning. And I just had to make a conscious decision at some point that those were important things to me. And fortunately, with the encouragement of my wife for myself, not for her, but for me, to just spend time with the children and embrace them. And just the years are going by quickly. I had to figure out my restaurant, come up with a plan. We set a plan. We must have said plan 50 times in this, short time we've been talking, but really come up with a plan for me to be able to manage my business and step away. I went from having my hand in every detail of the business to entrusting and empowering people, which I should have. I should have started sooner. Yeah. And it's not always financially feasible for small business owners to pay that employee properly or to compensate that qualified employee to handle some of those responsibilities. But I would recommend it for a young person that be a goal. So you're working hard, you're trying to save capital, you're trying to grow, but on the other hand you're trying to balance life. And I think it just comes with making up your mind that these other things that require time and attention are important to you. The business is not going to be perfect as you were there, but it's not going to collapse, right? It's not, we're worried it's going to be a disaster without you. So as long as you're not walking away forever, and increments as you feel comfortable in the business could sustain it. But it's really, really hard to balance everything. It's not for everyone. So there's no shame in someone that gave it their shot and just kind of steps away because there are other things that require their attention that are more important. And I'm fortunate enough that I have a really great team behind me. And it took years to build this team, but I have some really good people, and they're the engine that make the Hangry Bison go, right? I mean, I'm the founder, I'm the guy behind the scenes. I started with the first one, but where we are today, I'm not at every restaurant, grilling every burger, greeting every guest. As I've grown in business and I've learned through experience, empowering, trusting, training them, executing my vision and trusting them to do my vision as an extension of me almost, has been critical to our success. So I'm certainly blessed.
Absolutely. There's a lot to that.
There is. Yeah, we could talk a lot, but I'd say to that, cheers to the Blantons.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that sounds good.
If that's okay.
And we'll do one more.
So yeah, this one here is our Blantons, which cheers. Is also part of the Buffalo Trace distillery. Yeah. And really highly sought after, rare. It's becoming more available, as we talked about earlier before the show. You're starting to see a little more available in some of the liquor stores and such, but still one of their flagship, very proud product from Buffalo Trace Distillery. So enjoy.
Here.
Enjoy. Any favorites?
Being somewhat of a whiskey guy, both bourbons and ryes, that's a really difficult question. But I'd have to say these three, probably the Blantons.
Okay.
So for me, it's a cousin of the Blantons. It would be Elmer T. Lee. It's not on here, but it's the same mash bill. It's a different proof, similar age statement, but it's the same exact mash bill as the Blantons. So it's fun to try the different, their master recipe starts is the same, but how it's aged is a little different, and they proof it differently, and then you could taste the little nuances. But it takes a lot of practice for us fancy whiskey guys to start telling the difference between all the flavors. But I'm a fan of Buffalo Trace and their entire portfolio.
Yeah, the stuff's delicious. If I'd have known I could have gone off the board, I'd have told you Midwinter Night's Dram by High West.
That's a fantastic one. Yeah. So we'll get into some of that maybe after the show if you'd like.
Well, that sounds like a good plan.
All right.
And on that note, both of you, Jeanette, Joe, Thanks for spending the time with us, and
Yeah.
me, and in particular to you for offering up this wonderful space. And thank you everyone out there for watching and listening. These are complex things we're talking about, investments, business planning, legal aspects of those, and it is general. It is not personalized advice. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your experts in these areas and us. And on that note, if you liked this and found it useful, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. And we look greatly forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Yeah.